We talked about the Swiss Army knife today in Holger's presentation. And our next speaker somehow is the Swiss Army knife of Siemens. He's been with the company for many, many years. He had some side jobs in between where he was looking into KUKA, for example. He started in consulting. This is why he has this strategic view on things within the company. He had run Siemens in Seoul many, many years ago, but that was probably the time when that region definitely started. So he knows the Asian side as well. He holds many supervisory board seats, Siemens Mobility, but also at the TU Darmstadt, so the academia side is in his vision as well. And since October 25, so just 1 month now, he's back in a new role at Siemens, which is actually a role he had owned many, many years ago, being the CEO of factory automation at Siemens Digital Industries, as it's called now. I'm curious what his status of technology, AI, co-pilots, all that are his best friends, how intensive this friendship has already become over these past 4 weeks in his new role and with the expertise of his 30 and more years within Siemens. Please join me in welcoming with a big round of applause, Dr. Horst Kayser.
Thank you very much for the, thank you, taking care of everything, for the nice introduction. I know I'm the last thing between you and dinner, so we better be positive. But the good thing is I will join the chorus of Michael and Patrick of seeing the potential and seeing the opportunity. And sometimes there is this saying that this part of the global hemispheres, we tend to look at glasses rather half empty or so. But I don't have the impression that this is the crowd that does that. We should be looking at the glass being half full and having huge potential to be fuller and fuller. I think we can, with clear view, say we are experiencing the dawn of a new era of robotics and automation with that in general. And looking here at the quotes of our tech visionary friends from the west coast of the US, the visions from there cannot get grander. Jensen Huang says everything that moves will be robotics someday, and that someday will be soon. Robotics is a multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity. Multi-trillion dollar, that's Billionen in German. Satya Nadella, who is usually a little more modest perhaps than Jensen, says AI and robotics are primed to reshape the world, ushering in a new wave of progress for business and society. And Elon, of course, thinks big. Also, he has shifted focus more or less entirely on Optimus rather than the good old car business. And with it, the value perception of his company. But even market research companies do join the chorus. Interact sees a $2 trillion worth of labor replacement with roughly 60-40 in the warehousing and manufacturing space versus the household and consumer space. And ARK Invest, Kathy Wood, always known for her grand visions as well, focusing on a $24+ trillion opportunity equally allocated to household, private sphere, and manufacturing. And we have heard also specific valuations of startup companies like Figure AI. The 39 billions had been mentioned before. SoftBank just made a big bet. buying the robotics business from ABB for more than 5 billion euros. And certainly the government of China is committed not in the order of 700 million, but in the order of above 100 billion in tech funds to invest in this industry. And then there are big customers, people who really drive the applications forward, like Amazon, who is already looking at the 1 millionth installation of different types of robots in their vast logistics operations, and really seeing that growing ever more. So these numbers are mind-boggling and perhaps even a little bit intimidating in a way. On the other hand, I think one thing we shouldn't forget. We really, in the sense of we as we're sitting in this room, and we perhaps in this hemisphere of the world, especially as far as applying these new technologies, applying physical AI to the manufacturing domain, to the manufacturing, warehousing, logistics domain. We shouldn't underestimate our know-how there. Because in the end, the grandiose strategies and theories need to be applied to a THT element fit neatly into the printed circuit board. And that's where decades, even centuries of manufacturing skill and know-how that we have today already embodied in our automation solutions does count in applying that. And that's something that, for example, Jensen Huang very frequently appreciates, that he says, we need companies like the big European industrials, for example, others, to translate these physical AI technologies to the real manufacturing world and really drive the productivity, the flexibility, and quality that we need as output. And so let's make sure we have stakes in the game. And these numbers were mentioned earlier as well. I mean, there have been nations like Japan, like South Korea. You mentioned that I spent some time there some time ago. Singapore, that had always high robot intensities. And now, of course, in the last years, China is really accelerating strongly. But then again, that certainly creates a market or is a market opportunity. You know? And even if we have seen, if the Chinese player may have the leg up here and there because they have a very sharp focus on super cost competitive solutions, well, we are all, and I think nobody in this room would deny that, in global business. And so we have to play the global business game by the always prevailing global business rules. And the global business rules, perhaps in the last 10, 20 years, were global scale, central manufacturing, perhaps in low-cost areas, or in highly automated, large-scale manufacturing, and then exporting to the world was a successful model. We all know and realize that that time may be over. Even if presidents and governments change, this focus on developing the regional economic markets by shutting out foreign competitors a little more, focusing on proprietary data, staying in the regions, that holds true for the Americas as here for the European areas, as for China and Asia. And so we just have to adapt to that rules of the game and become, for example, local in China, China for China, made in China for China, or even exported out of China, even as a global player. But these numbers do show that the market opportunities are there and need to be followed. And again, robotics capabilities are expanding at rapid speed. And adding physical AI now to the equation makes really clear that something is happening that will transform manufacturing and logistics as we know it in a tremendous way. AI, physical AI, is a GPT in the original sense, a general purpose technology. And it will change the rules of the game as other general purpose technologies have done before. For example, electricity, or even the globally available internet. As our CEO, Roland Busch, always says, with these kind of GPTs, general purpose technologies emerging, there's always a clear differentiation between before and after. And we are at this inflection point, and I think we should be aware of this, and we should, and I think that I can join the chorus of the VDMA. We should not be timid. We should think bold and think big enough. And we shouldn't leave this big thinking to some startups. They say, oh, they have crazy valuations and most of them will go bust. Well, may be true, but even the established players have to see the opportunities and follow them and focus on them, invest in them, and yes, perhaps team up and join together and collaborate if every individual cannot do it. And if you look at the technology development in the robotics field, especially, I mean, we put it here in this two-dimensional development field. In the vertical, we put up these 5 levels, I mean, in correspondence to the 5 levels of autonomy and autonomous driving. And that's exactly what's happening. We're coming from explicit programming. We go more to visual perception, of course, dexterous manipulation, tactile sensing, feedback. That's actually the technology frontier where we're currently playing, but it will go to goal-based control or intent-based robotics, and then finally autonomous reasoning. And on the other hand, the form factors of the robots evolve as well. From the classical industrial robot, six-axis robot, we have come to the already more versatile collaborative robots, even if they sometimes are behind safety bars again. And there will be a wave of more also autonomous form factors like the quadrupeds or the humanoids. But then in the same time, these two developments of the more dexterous and more versatile form factor development and the intelligence development are also not 100% correlated, but we feel it's 90%, 90-degree angle. So there's a field emerging where you can also focus and focus on individual solutions in the combination of the two at the forefront of robotics. But what is clear is AI will push the boundary to the upper right-hand side, and that will drive the growth. And of course, we're also collecting our own experience as a manufacturing company ourselves. For example, in an electronics factory here in Erlangen, we are, of course, combining our classical thematic platform-based fixed automation solutions with robotic solutions to automate tasks that couldn't be automated before. And so we're combining, as we always say, the real and the digital world. So we are planning and commissioning everything in the digital twin using our tools, and then combining our classical automation solutions with, for example, robots. And that shows, if you follow that in a consequent manner, that in this case, in this factory, we are growing installations of robots with 26% annually. So continuously shifting the boundary and automating tasks that couldn't have been automated before. One thing on the lower right, which we still see, is the engineering challenge, obviously. And that's really where software and AI will then eventually start to help and really accelerate things. Because today, engineering oftentimes is still multiple times the value of the actual robot hardware that you're buying to really get the nuances of the automation task right. So with all these opportunities emerging, I think the famous word collaboration has been mentioned before, and I think this is the right forum to talk about it. This is and thanks for the invitation. The Profibus International meeting, and I think it's a great tradition that we're meeting really annually now. And we have, I think, already demonstrated in the past that especially the interaction between classical automation and robot-based automation through tools like the SRCI standards have been really pushed forward. And so that from programming, simulation to operation, we can integrate robot programming into classical automation programming around, for example, our Siematic platform. And this picture has been shown before, and we're also proud and thank very much for the openness and interest to join the group of interested parties to really drive the purpose of joint automation solutions based on robotics technology forward, and by supporting our common ecosystem, for example, around SRCI. And we will drive this idea forward also in the future, because besides how physical AI will revolutionize robotics applications, of course also general automation solutions for the manufacturing sphere will grow more and more into the software world and will more and more be software defined. So we are on certainly on a transformation ourselves from the classical, again today Siematic-based automation platform into a software-based architecture that of course incorporates AI capabilities and AI application possibility into an architecture, and then in the field level of course integrates classical logic control and safety and numeric control, motion control, AI runtime solutions, diagnostics possibilities, and of course robotics from a number and big ecosystem of partners and players. So let's continue this journey together in the spirit of collaboration. The opportunities are vast and really promising, and so I do think we see the dawn of a new era of automation and especially robotics. Let's grab this future together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Horst. As you said, you're the only thing separating us all from evening entertainment, so we're going to dive right in. Who has a question for Horst? We don't want to waste any time.
That shall not limit the questions now. No. We're all rushing outside.
Absolutely not.
Collaboration is one thing we definitely heard a lot today, but also the use of new technologies. And Horst, I'm having a question, like being with Siemens myself. Acceptance, that's what Patrick showed us, is one driver. What's the acceptance level within Siemens in working with robots in our factories? And we're not just having factories here in Germany, it's also in China and other countries where we may be even more developed or less regulated.
Yeah, I mean, I think the acceptance is very high, because in the end, it's often experimenting with finding solutions, automating a task that couldn't be really thought about before, but then you find a way how to do it, you find a way to replicate it. And so that's actually motivating for the teams that are working on it. And I think what's always, of course, hovering with it is this question, are we abolishing too many jobs, and are we a job killer or whatever? I think all that we're sitting here, we have seen the automation industry in general. I mean, as you mentioned it, I'm following it the last 30 years in a way. And in the end, the productivity and the better process control and the quality, that's the output of higher level of automation, has always actually led to to, for example, market share gains and growth for those who applied those in the best possible way. So in the end, there are even more jobs than before. And on the other hand, we are fighting actually with the contrary effect nowadays. We are fighting with the lack of qualified personnel and staff. I think we will even have to speed up our automation activities. And that's also something that's true for China, for example, taking our own factories in China. Some of the factories with the highest level of robotic automation are in fact also run by our own colleagues in China. And that's, I don't think even so much that that's a physical truth or so, or problem. It's really the spirit to figure things out and to make it that way, and then build on it and drive things forward. And that spirit, I think we should kindle here as well.
Okay, wonderful. Patrick.
That's exactly my question. Thank you for this great presentation. So when we come together and discuss all this, what can we do to increase competitiveness, to be fit for the future? The lever that's most important is mindset. And then how can we change the mindset? That's not an easy question. Huh? How do we get to the people, into the heads and hearts? How can we do that?
Yeah,
it's not trivial.
No, it is not trivial at all. But again, I think if there is an area where we have a great chance to do that, it is actually Germany. I mean, sometimes, and let's say the center of Europe, but let's also focus a little bit on Germany here, with a strong manufacturing tradition, all the small and medium enterprises in machine building and so forth. We know that they're all struggling currently due to the things with the automotive industry, but still there is a strong culture, I feel, of industrial businesses and using, for example, automation to drive competitiveness. And I think one big advantage that we also have here is good labor relations, because that comes back to your question. I have to say that in our company, I don't see any hindrance from driving automation and productivity solutions forward as aggressively as the engineers come up with it, basically. So I don't think we're being limited on that front. That should be no excuse. Yeah? And quite the contrary. I think we have great labor relations. We have good established processes to find good agreements, to go forward, to also sometimes make the necessary changes when necessary, but not in a hire and fire logic, but in an agreed upon action plan going forward. And I think that's actually, that again comes to this point that we do have the domain know-how, how to run manufacturing plants and activities, and also how to automate them. And by the way, yes, let's export that also to the US. I do tend to agree to something that has been said before. The United States, they want huge new volumes of own value add on their shores, and it's okay, it's rightly so. In the last 10, 15 years, the amount of industrial value added in the global economy in the US has really shrunk from somewhere 24% to 16%. So that's dramatic, and that's the Detroit areas, the Rust Belts, and so forth. So that they want to reverse that somehow, and if it's always the right process is another issue, but that they want to reverse that somehow is understandable. But why not go there and help them? I mean, we have great examples. Our big automotive companies, they have great plants in Tuscaloosa and other areas in the southeast. And why not? Why not? As we do local for local in China and export from there, let's do local for local in the US, and be not timid. We know how to do it. And by the way, we're also applying robotics.
Thanks for an excellent presentation. I have a question around how you're working with startups, and what do you see the role of startups in this third wave of robotics that you mentioned?
Yeah, Well, I think there are different ways. There are, if you will, specialists that you incorporate in solutions, so in smaller local ecosystems. Yeah. So they then are just integration partners and to realize a certain industrial solution. But then there are these big and famous startups. They're like the Figure AIs and the Neuras and other than that. They certainly are also like potential cooperation partners here and then, and we have to figure out, for example, like Michael from KUKA also mentioned on this huge investments that may be necessary in foundational models. Yeah, how to really play that in the best possible sense. But then let's also not forget that the startup arena as such also plays a certain role in and of itself as a laboratory, because it's very clear that not all these startups that are out there today, and that only because they're building a humanoid and that can make a flip-flop or something, they will have billions of valuations now, they will not all succeed. And by the way, also the flip-flop company that does this since 10 years hasn't really succeeded so well economically, if you look at it. And so this is also a big laboratory where a lot of stuff gets tested out, and a lot of stuff will fail. Let's not be wrong about that. So what that means is that again there, yes, collaboration probably with multi-partners on different issues. Always knowing if you put all your eggs in one basket, for example, and would closely cooperate with one, you may be in bed with the wrong one. Yeah, so that's a tricky game, especially in this one now, where the future potential is so high. I mean, people have calculated if humanoids, for example, really become household products, yeah, and which is not unconceivable anymore. I think then you have for a household the third high-tech product. You have a car, you have a smartphone, and you may have a humanoid. Yeah, and the humanoid may be somewhere between the smartphone and the car from the price point. But if that's true, then there will be an industry emerging that has roughly the size of the global automotive industry, or perhaps like the Apples plus Huawei's plus other smartphone players. And that's a huge industry. And that's a huge, I mean, you can even think of serving this industry with components, because it's really a growing customer base. And so nobody can really afford to miss out on this, but still also nobody knows who will be the Daimler-Benz or the Toyota of this future industry yet. So careful interaction, but interaction.
The fourth pillar in the household is the Thermomix. You did not mention that one.
That's true, though. I'm discussing this with my wife since
and if the robots can actually handle the Thermomix, I'm fully in.
It will be loading it, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, just being cautious of time once again. I think we need to wrap it up there. Maybe, Horst, you're going to stick around a bit later.
I will.
For some more questions. To sum up, you showed us at the very start a few of the statements from some of the visionaries. If I had to ask you for your personal vision of the future when it comes to robotics, what would it be?
Yes, I do agree with the visionaries that there is a huge wave of investment and trial and error and coming at us. I do tend to disagree, because they basically indicated that there would be like a 50-50 distribution between industrial logistics applications versus household. Yeah, and that will depend. In the end, the private market, the household market, will be much larger, as it always is. But the industrial market is harder. The solutions to make it's actually harder to put a THT element into a printed circuit board than put a dish in the dishwasher. And so that's why the industrial market again requires all the attention of us who know how these manufacturing processes work. And even if that market is not so big relative to all we see today, it will be multiple times bigger. So it is a huge opportunity. Let's go at it.
Let's do that. Thank you so much, Horst.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the evening. Big round of applause
Thank you.
for Horst Kayser. Thank you.